So, continuing on our little cleanup tour of the world, you may remember that, like, the very first time we passed through here, there was what we now know as a portal gate.
I frankly do not remember that.
You probably will as soon as you see it. But so that chest right there has been taunting us since the literal beginning of the game. And we will finally claim it.
I mean, I'm sure I can remember there being a chest that was like completely not apparent how to get. But I would be lying if I said I could remember in any detail that this thing was there. I mean, I'm honestly shocked to learn that there are actually other applications for the portal thing. I thought that was just a dungeon gimmick. And anyway, that's it? A fucking health potion?
The portal thing that they taunted us with in the literal first part of the game was for a small health potion.
Motherfucker. Oh well. So yeah, we've been like repeatedly referring to the fact that this thing is doing a Metroid Prime on us. Specifically that it's doing a Metroid Prime 2, but you know, who's arguing? Which got me like contemplating this trend in a lot of... I don't think it's a trend in all games, but like there is definitely a noticeable thing in games, there's probably a fucking TV trope for it, where towards the end, or sometimes even right at the end, they just find a contrivance to have you go on a big world tour and go and revisit a bunch of places. And in Metroid Prime, that's the quest to get the keys, and in Zelda Wind Waker, it was the Triforce quest that nobody likes. And in this game, it's Metroid Prime 2 again. But it strikes me that it's not just Zelda-likes and Metroid-likes that do that, but I keep thinking of JRPGs that do this. Like, oh, I don't know, off the top of my head, Final Fantasy X famously opened up pretty much right at the end and be like, hey, go anywhere. I think Final Fantasy X worked in that regard. What do you think?
I'm gonna say major shout out to this fucking Ivy that's goddamn invisible. That was not pictured was about 10 to 15 minutes of how the fuck do I get up there?
I mean, you're not wrong, but...
But, yeah, Final Fantasy X, I admit I do not remember a whole lot about late game 10, because most of that kind of stuff that did open up at the end was like, oh, this is some tedious bullshit for a super weapon for a character that I'm not using.
I mean, yeah, there is, like, the elephant in the room that all of the major... Well, most of the major side quests in 10 were like, do this unbelievable shit to go and power up the celestial weapons. And a couple of things were just like some conversations and some flavour. But the fact remains, even just in the main plot, there were a couple of reasons for you to go and revisit a bunch of places, and you just could. I mean, if anything, you could say that Final Fantasy X is a refinement of this idea, because it opens up this late game victory lap of the world, and it's almost entirely optional, but most players will probably do it because they will actually give a shit about the world. Like, that's good, right?
I would say that is a fair assessment. That having the player care about your world makes the whole world tour idea much more palatable.
Like, Final Fantasy X was pretty good about having a world that you could engage with, like, just that you could care about. You can say a lot of very valid things against 10, but it was good about setting up its world and getting you, like, at least somewhat invested in the outcome of all of it. A bit janky along the way, but man, what you're gonna do? It was 2001. Another janky 2003 if I remember right. The specific one that I remember is Tales of Symphonia, but I think every Tales game does this thing where literally right before the very final point of no return, when you go and fight the final boss, you can say, actually no, I'm going to turn around and like 50 side quests just opened up. I want to say that Symphonia was the most egregious of these.
Vesperia, I believe, is the most... Well, I think Symphonia might be the most egregious with regards to this very specific instance, but Vesperia as a whole is the peak. How the fuck were you supposed to know that there was anything here for this side quest?
I mean, like with Final Fantasy X though, these are all side quests. Like, it doesn't track directly to Metroid Prime and Zelda, because in all those games and in this game, the last thing that you have to do is actually a part of the main plot. Whereas in Final Fantasy X, you did still have to do some globetrotting at the very end, and things did open up. But like in the main story, you had to go on like 2 or 3 stops. But the Tales thing is I want to say it's an unrefinement of the Final Fantasy thing, where it's just a bunch of side quests, most of which aren't really plot stuff. Like, the players wouldn't care in the way that they would care about stuff in Final Fantasy X and go back to revisit, so maybe this doesn't track as tidily as I thought it did after all.
Another thing, we have finally gotten this piece of heart. Was it worth it?
We don't have to answer that. Any particular World Tour instances stick out in your mind?
I kind of like Grace's, like the way Tales of Grace's did it, because it did something similar, but also Tales of Grace's was the first game that came after Vesperia, where they realized, hey, maybe we should tell you where side quests are.
What? Nonsense. That's not how this works at all.
But yeah, no, I can't think of a whole lot. But I admit that for the most part, JRPGs especially, I just have... By the time I'm at where I'm going to the final boss, I don't really care about the World Tour because I just want it to be over.
Do you know what game had a World Tour that was extremely good, extremely memorable, a twist on lots of things that chronologically didn't come out until after it, that was perfectly thematically on point, has lots of reasons to care about it, is all around amazing, is technically all optional, but is 100% plot flavor, and is amazing and we should all respect? I think the chronology comment should have made a slight clue there. But fuck it, it's Earthbound. Earthbound fucking nailed the World Tour idea. Because it was an epilogue. The whole thing happened after the end of the plot. You beat the final boss and the world is saved, and you go and do an actual, literal victory lap. I mean, you can even ride the bike again for the first time since you got a second party member. But you can go and revisit literally every single place, and everyone will talk about something and thank you for saving the world or whatever.
Tokyo Mirage Sessions does something a little similar to that, where after you beat the game, you get thrown into this little epilogue where you get to go back to all the locations and it encourages you to go and see all of your contacts and talk to them and whatnot. So, yeah, something similar to that.
See, it's not... I mean, it seems faintly wrong to call that stuff, like, a part of the main plot, even though it really, literally is, but, you know.
This is no ambush, horseman. I come alone. I, Uriel of the Hellguard, champion of the White City, call you, horseman, to Nex Sacramentum.
Fool.
I lay claim to your life before the Creator. Will you dishonor this law as well?
Why?
Because Abaddon said you understood honor, and because he was the best of us.
The death oath cannot be broken until one falls by the hand of the other. I accept.
I feel like challenging someone literally called war to a death oath is probably not the wisest thing in the world.
I mean, everyone knows you can't defeat war. War just keeps on going. War is an idea. War will never truly die.
Yeah, so Uriel Bout 3 is basically identical to number 2. If she has any new attacks, oh, this one is new.
Well, that's something. I mean, that really wasn't actually. That was a pretty nothing of an attack. It's very flashy, but seems pretty trivial.
Also, you can see how much damage we're taking.
Very, very little damage. I can see why we did all that.
Yeah, so like if we were kind of functionally invincible with like all the health potions and stuff before, we are I don't want to say literally invincible, but we're getting pretty close.
Basically invincible. Like, it's like we got 10 entire health bars after this, and an entire fight is basically taken out half of one, and we have healing. It's a nothing. Whole thing is nothing. Anyway, I joked about like Shadow War being the Platinum rival fight, and you know that fight did have a cross counter cutscene, but honestly, Uriel seems to be closer to that role.
I don't know that this game really has a proper rival. Like, even, like I said, Uriel might be the closest, but...
Yeah, I mean, the closest is still a comparative. It doesn't, it's still kind of a stretch to make it as an analog, but I'm mostly going off of the fact that it's about the same size as we are, and we've fought her, like, this is the third time, and it builds up this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, they have effectively raised the stakes. I mean, say what you will about whether or not they'll ever actually pay it off, but she did literally this time challenge us to a death oath.
Yes, yes. What are you waiting for? Harvest this wench. What? Don't you dare walk away from me!
The Nex Sacramentum is mine. I decide when the angel dies, not you.
You swore an oath to me.
Abaddon is the destroyer.
Liar!
To protect you, he kept you from the truth. You pledged to follow your lord into hell, never knowing what awaited you, or what he would become.
Abaddon.
He was betrayed and became the enemy of all creation. I've been to the tree. Its gift was truth. and I share it with you now. Remember the death oath. Soon it must be fulfilled.
I mean, yeah, they never actually specified how somebody would be forced to kill the other. Like, there's no time frame on it. It's not in the rules that they can't just walk away and do it later.
This is true. We are exploiting the fuck out of a technicality right now.
Last piece of that accursed blade. Now, get back to Ulthane and finish this business.
I mean, technically, the only way that you can actually, like, definitively break the terms of this oath is if somebody dies for, you know, not by our hand. But until either she or we die for some reason other than murder by the other, it's still valid.
My greatest work. Until now.
I mean, I don't know about that war. I mean, I don't see how literally remaking the same blade again from its broken shards is a greater work than making the original.
Look, we gotta hype this up somehow.
It just felt a little bit off the mark.
I do want to give a big shout out to the cutscene blocking in the Uriel cutscene, because man, that was some,
Oh yeah, that was some camera work.
say, War's beautiful face slides into motion, and then we go back to the side view?
Yeah, that's like... somebody really wanted to do, like, a capital S shot there.
Anyway, yep, that sure is Abaddon up in heaven.
Well, I guess we got another new weapon.
Yeah, so the Armageddon Blade replaces the Chaos Eater, so it is now our full-time sword. It is automatically level 4, so it's already at max damage, and if you haven't done so already, this unlocks all the level 4 moves for free.
So this is basically the true dragon sword, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, the only catch is you can't give it an enhancement, is the only weird thing about it. Which is fine, it's already better than literally everything else anyway, so...
It is the enhancement. This is fine. Besides, we've already got all of our other broken shit anyway. What's one more reforged thing?